Iran, and the fuel to run it was supplied by the United States. But in 1979, the revolution and the birth of the Islamic Republic, Ayatollah Khomeini initially suspended Iran's nuclear efforts and then changed his mind after a devastating 8-year war with Iraq, when Saddam Hussein used chemical weapons on Iran as well as on his own people.
What Miss Armanpour neglects to mention is that the United States and Great Britain had never forgiven Iran for the overthrow of their puppet, the Shah, and that the Iraqi dictator was supported by both nations in his war against Iran, which has never attacked another nation in living memory.
Khomeini's successor, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has said as recently as this year that Iran never has and never will go after nuclear weapons.
We do not have nuclear weapons, and we shall not build nuclear weapons.
But from the outside, Iran has long given the impression that it does have something to hide. In 2002, the world discovered Natanz, a secret underground plant to enrich uranium. In 2009, it uncovered another plant, Fordow, built deep inside a mountain near the holy city of Rome. And then there's the research center at Esfahan, and at Arak, construction on a reactor that could produce plutonium. And finally, the conventional military site at Parchin, where the UN nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, alleges that Iran may have carried out nuclear-related explosive tests in the early 2000s.
Get that? Alleges and may have. But what about another slant on what is being hinted at as evil secrecy? Iran's scientists and leaders would have to be as thick as two short planks to build anything sensitive out in the open, considering Israel's propensity to attack anything it feels like attacking. The USS Liberty, June 8, 1967. Iraq's nuclear reactor near Baghdad, 7th of June, 1981. Syria's Al-Quba nuclear facility, September 6, 2007. Operation Cast Lead, December 27, 2008, ending January the 18th, 2009, killing nearly 1,500 Palestinians, including an estimated 350 children. The attack on the Gaza Freedom Flotilla, May 31, 2010, in international waters, and the cold-blooded murder of 9 Turkish men. Yes, very sensible for Iran not to leave anything lying about for the Israelis to have a crack at, not to mention Iran's foresight in burying its nuclear facilities underground, in the light of Japan's Fukushima disaster and the way that the United States, Britain and Israel have been peppering the Middle East with so-called depleted uranium, which causes birth defects like these. But all that the tunnel-visioned IAEA and apparently CNN seem to care about is what Iran might be getting up to.
Iran is not telling us everything.
As opposed to Israel, who's telling them nothing.
We are asking Iran to engage with us proactively.
We categorically reject that any of the military sites are related to nuclear activities.
But uncertainty lingers.
Of course it does, because the international bullies thrive on uncertainties. But as the next section of the original program was full of fairly predictable statements and unprovable speculation, I'm going to jump ahead a little and we'll hear what Robert Kelly, a former IAEA chief inspector in Iraq, has to say about Iran and its obligations.
They have a legal binding treaty type agreement with the state that says you tell us what facilities you have, what material you have, and we will come and inspect them and verify that you're telling us the truth. IAEA is not free to just run around the country and ask questions. So as much as I hate to say it, the Iranians are correct in saying that the IAEA has no right to ask some of the questions they're asking, and they have no right to go some of the places they're asking to go.
There is an additional protocol to the NPT. That protocol gives the IAEA even more authority to inspect sites. From 2003 to 2005, the Iranians voluntarily agreed to this higher standard, the additional protocol. But when they didn't get anything in return for the United States, Iran stopped adhering to that additional protocol. So what Iran does today is it adheres to the letter of the law of the NPT treaty and does not do anything extra.
We have total suspicion of the Americans and Western intentions.
So what do you want to hear them say?
Well, Iran's right to use fully all of its possibilities under NPT.
So the right to enrich and the right to continue a civil program.
And then they should ask us for more transparency. That's fantastic. We agree with that. The best thing is that we take steps which leads to whatever they say, adding the confidence, and also it will give us also the confidence. The lack of confidence is both ways.
Ordinary Iranians absolutely, by and large, support the nuclear program for peaceful purposes, and some actually support it for nuclear weapons as well. When I was in Iran last year, I heard from a number of people saying, well, why shouldn't we have the nuclear bomb? And I'm not talking about people who are regime supporters. I'm talking about ordinary Iranians who might not even like the regime. A lot of people in America don't realize the president of Iran is not the commander-in-chief. President Ahmadinejad does not have the military reporting to him. The supreme leader does. It's his decision to suspend uranium enrichment if Iran ever does that, and it did it once in the past. It's his decision to expand enrichment.
There is a belief in Washington, I think a very deeply held one, that Iran either has nuclear weapons today or is determined to get them. The current Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, and the former Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, have both ruled that the pursuit of weapons of mass destruction, including nuclear weapons, is un-Islamic. It is forbidden in Islam.
Iran's Supreme Leader the other day again mentioned his fatwa against nuclear weapons. He called it, again publicly, a great sin. What message is he sending? Is he sending a message to President Obama that Iran will not cross Obama's red lines, will not go military in its nuclear program?
The Ayatollah's statement was unequivocal and could only mean that it would be a sin before the Islamic God to develop nuclear weapons. But apparently Ms. Armanpour doesn't think that this is a good enough answer for the President of the United States.
The message is clear. Deal with Iran as it is. Iran is not after nuclear weapon. Nuclear weapon is not an asset for us, it's more liability. Pakistan has nuclear weapon. You see, it's a shamble country in terms of security. It doesn't add to our security. We are secure enough. We are strong enough without nuclear weapon, and it is against the fatwa of Ayatollah Khamenei. Nobody has daring to do that.
So even if Iran was attacked, you wouldn't decide to go towards a nuclear military program?
This is the fatwa of Imam Khomeini and the fatwa of Ayatollah Khamenei.
The threat of a nuclear-armed Iran has sparked not just suspicion, but fear and loathing, truths and lies, from Israel to the Arab world, from Europe and the United States. And recently, a new phenomenon, what one expert is calling mainstreaming war. In other words, talking so often and so publicly about attacking Iran's nuclear facilities that all of a sudden the idea becomes normal, even inevitable. The West says Iran has the right only to a peaceful nuclear program, and as yet, neither American, Israeli, nor European intelligence agencies believe that Iran has made a decision to actually go for a nuclear weapon. So what if there is a preemptive strike on an unproven program? Israel and the United States seem to have different red lines.
My policy here is not going to be one of containment. My policy is prevention of Iran obtaining nuclear weapons.
We're determined to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. We leave all options on the table.
But the Israeli government has gone a step further, now saying that Iran must be stopped before it acquires the capability to produce a weapon. Israel says Iran will cross one red line in 2012, where Israeli military intervention will no longer be an option to stop what it believes are Iran's ambitions.
None of us can afford to wait much longer.
This notion that somehow we have a choice to make in the next week or 2 weeks or month or 2 months is not borne out by the facts.
Since the 1979 revolution, the Islamic Republic has backed the Palestinians, and fiery rhetoric from the current president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, makes a tense situation even worse.
President Ahmadinejad's rhetoric is fiery, but Prime Minister Netanyahu's goes unremarked.
Despite Ahmadinejad's persistent provocations, President Obama still persists on the diplomatic track.
And in the words of the great John McEnroe,
you cannot be serious!
No matter what Obama might be saying here, leading the international community in imposing vicious sanctions against the population of another nation is anything but diplomatic.
But the threat of an attack on Iran still looms.
Inside Iran, people are starting to believe that a war is possible, or probable even, in some cases. People don't see a way out right now because they don't believe that the Iranian regime is going to give in to the West. They also don't believe that there's anything the Iranian regime can really do that will satisfy the West.
The Prime Minister of Israel believes that Iran has a nuclear weapons intent and one that will be aimed at Israel. Is Iran preparing for war?
We are fully prepared to defend ourselves. And everybody knows in the region that Iran is not an aggressor, but Iran is a fierce defender. I think the real bomb is not the atomic bomb of Iran. The real bomb is the great failure of Israel to prove its legitimacy and to define a meaningful relation in the region.
Meantime, everybody talks about what President Ahmadinejad said a few years ago, that Israel should be wiped from the face of the map.
It is outrageous that this proven mistranslation is still being used by mainstream media commentators, and I'm almost certain that Mohammad Laranjani's initial response has been edited out of this section.
People believe that that means militarily. Is that what the president meant? Is that Iran's intent?
No, definitely not. I think neither president meant that, nor it is a policy of Iran.
The real concern the Israelis have, and this is real, I disagree with it, but it is real, is that Iran, even with a protected nuclear capability, that's essentially a nuclear capability that can't be bombed, is a threat to Israel's preferred national security strategy to use force whenever, wherever, and in whatever proportion it wants against its neighbors. So it means, in plain English, if Israel wants to bomb Gaza, or if Israel wants to bomb Hezbollah, they'd have to think twice about it.
That is one of the most succinct and accurate summaries of the Israeli position that I have heard. And I am surprised that Christine Amanpour and her producer included it in the program. Perhaps they didn't quite understand what it meant. So here's my interpretation. Iran, with or without nuclear weapons, is the only nation in the Middle East capable of countering Israel's aggressive behavior towards its neighbors. And as Shakespeare might have put it, isn't that something devoutly to be wished? There followed, in the original program, the usual analyses about how Israel might go about attacking Iran, windows of opportunity and that kind of thing, and the section ended with a warning.
Should the enemy be aggressive towards us, whether the United States or the Zionist regime, we will respond and reciprocate proportionally.
If somebody thinks in the world that by attacking Bushehr or other places, Natanz,
or Fordow,
then Iran will be deprived or delayed for 10, 20 years in their progress in the development of nuclear technology, they are deadly wrong.
There are ways that people are concerned that Iran would retaliate if struck. Closing the Straits of Hormuz. Would you do that?
Well, here I want to copy the wording of President Obama. Every possibility is on the table, so nothing should be excluded.
If the United States is seen either directly or through Israel as trying to attack this critically important scientific program of an Islamic country, the reverberations against the United States and Israel, I think, will not be subdued for a generation. I think that we will see U.S. standing in the Middle East dwindle to near zero. We will be left with, at most, our alliance with Israel. I don't even think at the end of the day the Saudis would stand with us.
Iranians are really very, very nationalistic people. Even those who are very, very much against the regime and would like to see the regime fall or be overthrown would hold a very negative view of the West and a very negative view of the attackers.
The best strike does not necessarily stop this. Particularly the Israeli case might simply create a situation where Iran declared, we have been preemptively attacked, aggressively attacked. We now have no choice but to basically have a crash nuclear weapons effort.
Analysts always look for the worst case scenario. If attacked, Iran is likely to build its own bomb, which of course is far from being a certainty, but the obvious way of avoiding this is to stop this insane Israeli-led vendetta against Iran. Miss Armanpour then took a trip down memory lane, telling us that she was there during the disputed election, and which nation doesn't have disputed elections these days, relating this one to the so-called Arab Spring. A facile comparison which ignores the fact that Iran had its Persian Spring way back in 1953, which quickly became a 63-year-long bleak midwinter when their newly democratically elected leader, Dr. Mohammad Mossadegh, was taken out of circulation by the CIA and Britain's MI6 and replaced by the Shah, so that the rape of Iran's most valuable natural resource could continue unabated. And unabated was Miss Armanpour's badgering of the representative of a nation which is already obeying all of the IAEA's rules.
What is Iran prepared to give?
The equation is simple. The Western community can ask us for more transparency. We are ready to go to full transparency.
Full transparency?
Full transparency.
More than you're giving now under your legal obligations?
It is more than additional protocol. This permanent human monitoring. But it should not come at the first stage. This is two parallel lines. One step transparency from us, one step cooperation from the Western.
A not unreasonable position, but there were still more questions, including this audacious suggestion from a CNN reporter about what amounts to the rights of a sovereign nation to conduct its own affairs in the way it sees fit.
Is all this worth it? The billions of dollars that you've spent, the years under sanctions, the crisis that could be coming to a head. Is it all worth it?
Oh, yes.
Because it actually hasn't materially enriched you.
No, very much enriched us. We are not secondary citizens of the world. We are number one citizen of the world. We want to enjoy exactly the same rights the United States and United States people enjoying at the international level. Don't tell us that you are a little bit below. Treat us as a first-degree citizen. Then we will be more forthcoming.
I've been covering Iran since 1991, and I've interviewed 3 presidents.
The summing up was fairly predictable. It included a repeat of the Iran must obey mantra, along with a few rhetorical questions, ending with this ominous warning.
The answers might mean the difference between war and peace. The challenge is certainly one of the greatest that the world faces right now.
In truth, the biggest challenge facing the world right now is the dishonesty of the mainstream media, collectively the guardians of my invented organization, the International Bureau of Double Standards. And none other than Christine Armanpour provides us with a classic example in this promo.
Armanpour is back.
While you have the person in front of you, you have to do your best to get information out of them. What is your feeling about gay people? What is your vision for this job? Sometimes you have to ask the same question over and over again to get to the truth. Can you assure that you will not seek another term? Will you step down?
Getting answers on the issues that matter. Armanpour, tonight on CNN.
But let's take a closer look at just one of those statements.
Sometimes you have to ask the same question over and over again to get to the truth.
On the other hand, sometimes you have to leave out the most important questions because you'd probably get fired for asking them. So, in a recent interview with Erhard Barak, a man whose finger is as close to Israel's nuclear button as anyone's, Ms. Armanpour did not ask him in what circumstances Israel would use any of its estimated 200 to 300 nuclear weapons, while Barak droned on about Iran's threatening language.
No, I will tell you exactly what he said. He said, and others father said in public many times that the Zionist entity, it's a code name for Israel.
The bottom line is that the mainstream media are telling us only what Zionist Israel and its so-called friends want us to hear. And what we are hearing most is that Israel has the right to defend itself preemptively.
The Jewish state will not allow those who seek our destruction to possess the means to achieve that goal. A nuclear-armed Iran must be stopped.
But make no mistake, the threat of another war in the Middle East isn't just about what might be coming, it is already having a devastating effect on many people's lives. It was George Bernard Shaw who said, if all economists were laid end to end, they would not reach a conclusion. And ironically, Shaw was a co-founder of the London School of Economics. But you don't need to be an economist to know how vital energy is, and that when the price of oil goes up, things start falling apart economically. During the last few months, hardly a week has gone by without some gathering of heads of states and their fiscal wizards discussing how to fix their nations and the world's economic woes. Meetings about the crises in Portugal, Spain and Greece, the possible breakup of the Eurozone, the rising unemployment figures all over the globe. But in all that time, I have not seen one politician, financial commentator, wizard or guru link any of these issues to the soaring cost of energy caused by a very nervous oil market. And no gutless financial commentator, wizard, guru or politician is about to risk his or her job by pointing out the more than obvious fact that the Israel-driven sanctions against Iran are having a disastrous effect on the world's economy. I'm not suggesting that this is the only reason for the recession, but to totally ignore the effect of sanctions against Iran, a nation with an estimated 10% of the world's total proven petroleum reserves, the world's fourth largest oil producer, is out-and-out economic insanity. Altogether now, to totally ignore the effect of sanctions against Iran is out-and-out economic insanity. Iran is not the problem, Israel is the problem. Therefore, citizens of all nations must ask themselves, who are the enemies inside the gates of my country? Who are the politicians, the so-called journalists and expert commentators who are selling my future and that of my children for the proverbial 30 pieces of silver? To me, it is evident that a majority of the practitioners and supporters of Zionism are racist, elitist, and intolerant of those who hold different views and opinions from their own. So I would not like this to become the concealed symbol of the land of my birth, and I am sure that citizens of other nations would feel the same. But I fear that the process is well underway.